Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Just a heads up, everyone, that my new book, Lessons in Gratitude, a memoir on race, the arts, and mental health, published by the University of Michigan Press, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. I encourage you to check it out. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is China Wilson, who serves as the Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University. China, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited about this opportunity and your interest in our work here, particular to DEI, and just really, it's an honor. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I am excited to talk to you. Obviously, Peabody is one of our great creative partners for the show, but not only that, I am a proud alum, having gone to Peabody Prep, which had an extraordinary impact on me as a young musician. So I'm excited to talk with you, and especially kind of right in your role and overseeing all diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to kind of get into kind of where we think some of those aspects and initiatives are heading. However, first and foremost, so much of this work that we do comes down to money and what students can and or cannot sometimes access in terms of educational opportunities because
Yeah.
of financial limitations. And just curious how things are going there at Peabody and if you might have any new initiatives that can impact students.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aaron, for asking. So, at Peabody, we're always trying to move the envelope, push the needle, advance opportunity and access in the greatest way possible. And that was happening before I arrived at Peabody. And now with my role, my inaugural role, and it's been about a year and 8 months since I've joined, we've been doing and working really hard and eager to push the needle even further. And so with an excited, work that we're doing, the excited work that we're doing, and with all of the impact that we're trying to make, really excited to announce that last spring, Peabody received an opportunity to afford resources that will meet 100% of demonstrated need for all domestic undergraduate students. So that means no loan financial aid packages for students that demonstrate the need to do so. So up to
Just
100% of the
extraordinary. Totally awesome. I'm
yeah,
losing my
yeah.
breath just thinking about it. So
Yeah, I pinch myself to think about it because, as you know, as a former artist myself in this world, in the conservatory world, a lot of it is merit-based, and that's still the case, and that is still an honored approach. But being able to meet, the ability for students to come to Peabody and to be able to meet need based on, what the circumstances are of their socioeconomic status is really a critical, change and a critical move in the right direction. And so Peabody is really excited to be leading in that way in this time.
this is, I mean, it's absolutely awesome and obviously impacts so many students. And it was a huge issue, I know, for me when I was in college and trying to think about where and how I could continue and advance my education.
Yeah,
So it plays such a critical role. And especially the idea that a student's historical financial situation shouldn't impede
that's
their
right.
access to the
That's right.
extraordinary teaching that's available at Peabody
Right.
is,
That's
yeah,
right.
so
That's
important.
right.
And so also initiatives like that, of course, definitely have an impact on the diversity of student body
That's
because
right.
of removing that. And so kind of in terms of that and kind of thinking about DEI overall, I kind of had two questions. One just specifically related to that and to say, do you expect and anticipate that you'll see, any kind of significant change in terms of the diversity of the student body ultimately because of this? And then I'd love to get a little more broad about DEI and kind of where you think think these overall initiatives are headed. But first, just the financial component.
Yeah. No, thanks for asking. We anticipated when this announcement first came out that it would indeed impact, the populations, an increase in underrepresented populations here at Peabody. But we, had to go through the cycle to figure out whether or not, there was actuality to that. And I will tell you, I was just in a meeting with some colleagues on yesterday. They're crunching the numbers and really kind of fine tuning things, but it was shared that we have seen a significant boost in underrepresented populations being enrolled here at Peabody. And so it's just, again, another moment to smile, another moment to rejoice because what we had hoped would happen, it turns out it has actually happened. Hopefully, we'll get those numbers in a more finite way in the days and weeks to come. But I can at least say, even now, that there is a demonstrated increase. Yeah.
It's so important, and of course, it shows the impact of these
Yeah.
types of things,
Yeah.
and the impact from donors and other sources of people who
Yep.
understand the importance and join in partnership
Yep.
with our arts
Yep.
organizations and
Absolutely.
institutions to do this work. So while this is incredible, right, and super positive, and
Yeah.
it's an amazing impact, there's definitely been institutions who are we partner with, and certainly people we've had on the show who are talking about the fact that they're hearing more pushback
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
DEI, and where even they're worried either some funders may pull back in terms of supporting DEI work, and or institutions are changing either because they have to from certain legal changes, and or they feel there's pressure to. Just wondering, really, what do you think about that? Are you seeing it? And is there any work you're doing to kind of prepare or work to mitigate some of this impact?
Yeah. So yes, we are seeing it certainly here at Johns Hopkins and at Peabody. Fortunately, at Johns Hopkins, we have 9 divisions, and within those 9 divisions, there is someone like myself in each one of the areas. And so I do have a cadre, if you will, of colleagues to lean on, if you will. There are other practitioners that may not be DEI deans, but folks that do DEI work, and we assemble as well. And so in this season and in this time, we've really truly been leaning on each other. We have an Office of Diversity and Inclusion, which is where our Chief Diversity Officer is housed. And again, another resource, another way in which we can kind of corral together to brainstorm, what to do, how to do it, how to be mindful of what's happening in current day, while also continuing to stay committed to equity, access, diversity, inclusion. I'll tell you this, I'm not sure that the words themselves will stay because they once upon a time didn't exist. I remember when I was in college, it was multicultural affairs, right? Now we have DEI, right? And so it suggests that the terminology could be ever changing. So I don't know that DEI as it stands as far as the words will stick around. But I do know I feel really committed and really confident, that in our nation it will continue because the population is continuing to grow. The numbers of underrepresented and groups that are potentially marginalized is continuing to grow. There is a need. And these groups are continuing to enter into higher education spaces. And so as those numbers continue to increase, particularly as it relates to the arts, right? Because the arts are where you can be your artistic self, your true self. You can speak what folks call their truth, right? In the arts, perhaps a little bit more fluid than in other fields. And so we're seeing by default of just, the arts and understanding different creative forms that you have different representations, right? So I don't think that that's going away. And I think so we're going to have to acknowledge that and respect that and be attentive to that and the needs, be attentive to the needs of that. But the way in which we do it could potentially change as far as what we call it. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And as you think about, right, there's a lot of times people who feel like, oh, they're even like, either under pressure, under attack, or like, why should we do this, da da da, so on and so forth. Just curious, that it seems that some are talking that the messaging that surrounds DEI,
yeah.
and or whatever it might be referred to is important, including even how it's referred to technically.
Yeah.
Any suggestions or thoughts that you have about that underlying when there are those in our audience who are also doing this important work, feel like, someone's coming to me and saying, why? why is this DEI work important, et cetera.
Yeah.
Any best kind of assets or case or suggestions that you would have for those in our audience who are looking for, the best resources to rebut and to respond to those arguments when they come?
Yeah, it's tough because, in the state of Maryland, things are a little bit different than they are across, the country and other places. And so when you have systemic entities that are just kind of wiping kind of DEI out and doing some of the sad things that we see happening, the way in which you try to mitigate that becomes even more of a challenge, and you feel defeated, you feel overwhelmed, you feel right. And so it's a little bit harder to navigate the waters in that type of territory. If you're in a territory, or if you're in a state, or if you're in a space that is a little bit more palatable to DEI work, things might go a bit smoother. I will say, however, this is one of the things where you wish you could write a prescription for all, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case, because it all depends on where you live, where you're from, what are you working at, a state school, private school? Are you in K-12? Are you a private, studio? Are you affiliated with a university? All of these things, right, vary. And then we've got, of course, the recent Supreme Court decision that has eliminated the use of race in decision making around admissions. And so there's all these complications, right, that folks are probably feeling a bit overwhelmed about, and don't know what to do. One piece of advice amongst many that I'll offer is to try, and when you come across someone who may not fully understand DEI and as a result is rejecting it, or based off what they know they rejected, I would encourage folks to help individuals really find commonality. We have more in common with folks than different. Yeah. And so a lot of times when it comes to DEI, folks feel like it's an attack, it's exclusionary, and it's not. It's trying to normalize equality for all, right? Really and truly, equity and equality are different, right? But what we should hopefully one day strive towards is that we don't need equity because everyone is equally getting the services and the resources and the support that they need. We have to create equity because equality isn't really doing the job, right? And so I say that to say, if we can give everyone, right, an opportunity to understand there's more commonality amongst us than difference, that's where then you can start building consensus. And sometimes you have to create space where folks can do some introspection within themselves to find out where their identity perhaps links up with someone else's identity.
I absolutely love this. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're unfortunately just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all my guests, right? So especially this work, it has to be so incredibly rewarding, especially when you have, right, like the new financial aid initiative, et cetera, that you see this amazing impact. But also there must be some tough days. And so wondering,
Yeah.
separate from kind of the, these professional solutions, et cetera, just as a leader in the arts field, in the arts sector, are there any mechanisms you use when there are tough days and you're trying to
Yeah.
find a way forward?
Yeah, no, great question. I would say, as I say to myself, I would say to others, love yourself first, right? Self-care. When you're in this type of work, especially within the arts, we love to serve, right? We have a mindset to serve. We have a mindset to make a difference, to impact, right? And sometimes we do it at the expense of not taking care of ourselves. And so I would say, treat yourself to that Friday pizza, or go on that trip, or do what it is that you need to do to rejuvenate yourself. I say that to individuals as artists, and I also say that to individuals who work in spaces around DEI. And I also say that to artists that are a part of underrepresented or marginalized identities, right? Because it becomes taxing at times. And so if you focus back on make the main thing, and the main thing is you, right? We can only be as best as we can for others as we are as good to ourselves. So self-care.
I absolutely love that, and especially because I love pizza and movies on Fridays. So knowing that
Yes,
I could totally live that. China Wilson, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for being on the show.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Just a heads up, everyone, that my new book, Lessons in Gratitude, a memoir on race, the arts, and mental health, published by the University of Michigan Press, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. I encourage you to check it out.